And this is it. We have the first episode of the new year. This is Be On Sunday, and we are coming at you live from our Brantford office. Hey, hey, hey. I can't forget that.
2022.
Yeah, 2022. Man, it is crazy. I feel like last year flew by.
It did.
And we are already in January of 2022. So much has happened. You know, just recapping last year, looking back from January to December, so much has happened, you know, not only in our personal lives, but just with the church in general. I feel like we can talk about that all day, but, you know, looking back over the last couple weeks, we had Christmas, we had so many different things. You actually went on a little vacation.
I did.
Yep, with your family. I saw all your pictures. It looked great. You guys look like one big, when I say big clan of people down there.
Yeah.
And your brother-in-law was down there, and
Yep.
also your in-laws were down there, so you
Yep.
got a chance to spend a little time with them. So how was it? How was your vacation? How was the last couple weeks?
It has been great. I loved time as a church, Christmas, celebrating Christmas, opening our new facility in Brantford. Lots of fun, lots of friends, lots of opportunity just to thank God for his grace and celebrate the goodness of God. Just an incredible time during our Christmas services too. I mean, we had a Wednesday night in Worcester, Friday in Middletown, Saturday night, and then Sunday 2 evening services. And they were just packed full of people that just wanted to worship Jesus, celebrate his arrival through Christmas. And that was great. And then just being able to get away afterwards. I try to be pretty intentional about my time when it comes to like, hey, if you're going to preach 9 times in 5 days, make sure you have, some back end time to just decompress. And so, my family flew down to Florida and had just, we ended up, it was supposed to be 7 days, but Chrissy and I were actually supposed to go to Israel right after Florida. And Israel is still closed to anybody that's not a resident. So we're going to do that later this year. And so we extended our Florida time just a little bit, and just great. I mean, lots of time to relax, to enjoy. I mean, I would go to the beach like every morning, Kurt, and just watch the sun come up and just be with Jesus 70 degrees. It was great. It was It was a good little mental and emotional break from the tundra of Connecticut. But we're back in New England, and this is where we belong. So,
I know. As we're doing this podcast, it's probably 5 degrees outside.
So cold. So cold.
It's so crazy. But I appreciate this time. I appreciate the opportunity that January brings, because
December 25th.
And December
Special
25th.
day, not just for Jesus, but Kurt's birthday.
Let's go. I am 1 year older.
Yep.
It's Christmas. Before I get into January, but looking back at the Christmas services, what an incredible moment. We saw so many new people come in, and just the production side of things, everything that happened. I mean, just give us a little recap on how you feel things went.
Yeah, so fun. I mean, one of the big things about Christmas that I'm so excited about is people experiencing Jesus. I mean, that's so simple, but so many new people show up during our Christmas services, and they get to experience the truth of the gospel and the power of Jesus. And we had so many people open their hearts to Christ, turn their lives over to Jesus, invite Jesus back into their lives during those Christmas services. It was just overwhelming. I mean, some services, 10, 20, 30, 40 people raising their hand, saying yes to Christ. So that's just, to me, the joy of the church. The church is to go and make disciples. It's to go and share the good news. The chance that we get to do that on Christmas, it's a really special thing. But beyond that, big shout out to our team. They worked really hard. Honestly, going into Christmas, because of the opening of Brantford and all the challenges of COVID, we felt a little disheveled coming into Christmas and thinking, we had to change our service times a bunch of different times because of building changes and opportunities for venues. And so it was like down to the last minute. And the team pulled it all together, and it felt like, if you've seen the new movie Sing 2.
Yeah, I love that movie.
It felt like we were all like last minute, like learning the song, go! Yeah. And it just worked, and it all fit together. And it really did get better and better every night because we knew what we were doing next, and we weren't guessing as much, but just a really special time. And love that team, love the hard work. Joey, all the production guys, they really worked their tails off to make this happen, and it came together. It was awesome. It's a lot of fun.
I mean, every Christmas,
Yeah.
it's always like, oh, what are we going to do this year, and how is it going to be different than last year?
Yeah.
But walking away from it, I think it was a combination of the building opening and the excitement behind that, new people coming in. We had 3 services here in Brantford, and just watching the joy on people's faces as they left.
I know.
That's what kind of excites me. I get to be a little bit behind the scenes, but just knowing what's going to happen and then seeing them as they leave, it's like, oh, what an impact that this service had for them and for their family, feeling good, laughing, joy, the joy, the smiling. That's what lights me up. I got excited for that.
Yeah, I mean, I had probably 9 or 10 family members that I've been inviting to church for years come this Christmas, and two of my uncles, just tears in their eyes, like really impacted, and that was just sweet. That was a gift to me, to be able to have them be a part of it. So yeah, it was awesome. Yeah, a lot of fun.
Well, so going back to Brantford has been open for the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
What are things like? How are things going? How does it feel to have a home location and all this that we're able to bring, and it's a way different than New Haven. And I'm going back and forth, loading into New Haven. You're there at 6 a.m.
That's
getting
right.
everything in, making sure every single thing is plugged into the wall. I mean, what is it like going into New Haven, knowing that all that is set aside, we're ready to go?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm still getting my feet wet. This was week 5. We've had 5 Sunday services there. I've preached 2 of them. So, there's 3 that I was not preaching because I take a break right after Christmas. I'm back this week and really excited for the next number of weeks that I'll be preaching. But I feel like a lot of it is like it's a weird moment to open a building, because Christmas time is often a time where people pull back and slow down a little bit. And then on top of that, you've got all the COVID challenges of these last number of weeks. And so I'm still feeling it out. I don't even know. We just had our first staff meeting in our new building today. And it was like, wow, this is awesome. You know what I mean? This is really fun. And so I think the space is still something that we're breaking in. Yeah. And it's probably another, I bet 6 weeks before we really kind of feel just the other week. This is the stuff that nobody cares about, but I care about. It was Sunday morning, and it's 80 degrees in the auditorium, and none of us can figure out how to turn the heat down. You know what I mean? It's just hey, how do we turn? I'm open a door. People are in t-shirts, it's so hot in here. And it's just all that stuff that we're figuring out as we go. But the construction team did such a good job. Everything is just really sweet. So I think the next few weeks we'll figure out what does it feel like to have an anchor location. But just even the pressure that it takes off, I'm so excited about what we can do production-wise. Yeah. So we've added a number of shots. You've seen those. We just got our big boom mic in, and things are going to get fun. We have our new backdrop coming in the next couple weeks. These next few weeks, as we work out the bugs, it's going to get really fun. Yeah.
And I was actually up in Hartford this past weekend for service, and I had a conversation with someone, and they were asking me, they go, oh, you go to Brantford? And I said, yeah. They said, oh, you were at New Haven? And they said, oh, are they going to, stream Justin in New Haven? I said, no.
Yeah.
Justin is going to go from Brantford. Yep. He's going to go drive to New Haven, then go back to Brantford, all in about a 2-hour span.
Yeah.
And they're like, no way. So a lot of people didn't know that that's actually what's going to happen. So walk us through actually kind of what that looks like for you.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm still kind of feeling it out, but I preach the 9 a.m. service, and then from there, I have a car ready to go. I shoot right down to New Haven. Thank God that traffic is pretty light on Sundays. Yeah. And so I arrive in New Haven generally in the middle of worship. Just jump into worship, kind of experience what's happening there. Then I preach in New Haven. And then it's right back, and that's a tight turnaround. That third service in Bridgeport, in Brantford, at 11:30. It's I got to kind of keep an eye on that one. Yeah. So the band knows, keep singing till I show up, and that's kind of the flow. I mean, we're still working out the bugs, but it's gonna work. It's a sweet opportunity for me. 10 o'clock is sort of the church hour. That's kind of the hour that most people want to go to church. Yeah. So to be able to preach live a 90-minute service at 9, at 10:15, and at 11:30 is a unique opportunity. You know what I mean? And so we're just leveraging all opportunities for the sake of the gospel. And so, I'm excited to get that flow really worked out. And I learned, I need snacks and I need water.
in the car,
in the
ready
car.
to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the first day I jump in the car and I'm ready to go. And I'm like, oh, I'm so thirsty. I just preached my guts out for 45 minutes. And I'm like, I didn't get any water. And then I realized, I start early Sunday mornings. And by the time you're driving back for the 11:30, it's like, 12 o'clock. Yeah. And I haven't eaten anything.
Lunchtime, yeah.
And I'm like, man, I didn't eat anything. And I'm burning calories up there preaching. And so snacks and water. Key.
The second service is like, why is he sweating out there? Like, where did he come from? He's huffing and puffing.
Yeah. So not to throw anybody under the bus, but the guys in New Haven, the second time I did the turnaround, they didn't let me in. And so I'm out there, I'm like, let me in. And they finally did. But it was just like, hey guys, you got to let me in, man. I'm texting you got to let me in. I got to come preach. And
that's so funny.
We're still working it out.
Yeah, that's all right. We'll get
figure
there.
it out.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
So there's a bunch of new things happening in the church. I know the Illume conference is coming up.
It is.
And you want to give a quick shout out?
I'm biased. Yeah. I'm biased.
Are biased.
I'll tell you, I've been working just with my wife a little bit, just hearing her messages, and just as she prepares those, it is a word for the women of our church. So I would encourage you. There's some slots left. It's going to fill up, and it's already jamming. But they do have a cap for how many people we can fit in there. So I would just encourage any ladies listening to this podcast, go to the Illume conference. It is going to be awesome. It's going to be really awesome coming up. And all the information's at voxchurch.org. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. Really proud of my wife, just her team and everything that's been going into it, the prayer, the preparation. It's going to be a really, really special time for the women of our church.
Yeah. And you also have a new sermon series that you're starting this upcoming week called This Present Renewal.
Yeah.
You want to give us a little tidbit?
Oh my goodness. So for me, obviously with Bury Your Ordinary, with a book, you always have to work way ahead, right? So I wrote that book in 2018 and 19, and then all the publishing work, et cetera, it comes out in 2021. We delayed the book because of COVID and just wanting to be able to teach the sermon series live and everything. And so that, it's not that it's old material, but it's material I've really worked on for a long time. And so, doing that series was fun, but I had all this new stuff in my heart that I want to preach that I have to, I'm doing the book. And so we did the whole book. We concluded our Wake My Heart series, which was a special time in our church, and then right into Christmas. So probably for the last 9 months, I've been studying, prepping, reading for this series, but not getting to use any of it. And so it's so this is just
burning.
It's burning. I just can't
ready
wait.
To go.
So this Sunday, 6 weeks long, and then we'll go into a series called Holy Spirit, talking about the third person of the Trinity, who he is, how to walk with the Spirit. So really excited about that too. But that 12-week period in our church, I believe, is going to be one of the most significant periods in our growth as a church, simply because it's calling us back to focus every aspect of our life around Jesus. And so really excited about that. This Present Renewal is all about spiritual renewal, awakening, revival. What does it mean to be renewed spiritually? Where do we see that in the Bible? And there's lots of stories of renewal, so we're going to be looking at those. And then where do we see it in history? How has God moved historically for renewal in churches across the nations of the world, different times, different seasons? So it's going to be a little bit of a history lesson mixed in with a little bit of a Bible lesson, mixed in with what God is doing right now. So really excited about it.
That's going to be powerful. So going back and talking about this sermon series just a little bit, you mentioned renewal, you mentioned, using this and the upcoming new year. How do you prepare for a new year? What are some of the things that you lay out? Do you have all your sermon series laid out for the whole year, or is this something that you block off in sections?
Yeah. So for me, obviously there's the personal side of preparation, and then there's the ministry side. When it comes to the teaching and preaching, I'm usually planned out for the whole year. So this year I have about 90% of my sermons mapped out through the end of 2022. So I know our fall series, I know our summer series, I know everything we'll do in spring, and then of course the winter. And so that's mapped out at different degrees. I literally have my text for probably the first 15 weeks of all mapped out. And I've got my assistant helps with research. And so she's already kind of doing a lot of the research prep. I buy a bunch of books. So I just finished buying my books for the spring after Easter kind of series that we're working on. And I'm finalizing that. And then I have a meeting next week to sort of finalize our summer series, which I'm really looking forward to. And so, this is kind of how we roll, man.
You're ready to go.
Yeah, we always try to stay ahead. Obviously, we want to be led by the Spirit. But I think, as a young Pentecostal in my early days following Jesus, I always thought being led by the Spirit meant that you had to be spur of the moment. And being sensitive in the moment is a part of being a good communicator and a preacher, but the Holy Spirit can speak to you ahead of time too.
Yeah.
So I really seek the Lord throughout the year in preparation for the coming year, asking him, Lord, where do you want us? It's a longer process for me. I take those ideas and I kind of submit them to our elders, to our WLC. I say, hey, give me feedback. What do you guys see the Lord doing in our church? They give me feedback. Then I give it to a bunch of our other leaders in the church. I say, what are you guys sensing? And usually by September, I've got a map for the coming year, for the whole year.
Oh. Well, that's great. I mean, it's good to know, just to have that preparation, but at the same time, how do you balance, your spiritual life, but also your personal life,
Yeah.
looking forward to this new year? Everybody talks about New Year's resolutions, and it's also a good time to reflect, to figure out, a game plan. What's this year going to look like? What are some of your goals? What are some things that you do personally to grow spiritually, but also, grow in your life, grow in, with your family, different things like that?
You know what? I'm so glad you asked. Kurt. And of course, Kurt asks me all these questions in the moment. So he never gives me any preparation.
Nope.
No. It's good. Yeah. I think so. Two things come to mind right away. The first is calendar. The second is goals. Okay. Mm-hmm. So in terms of calendar, I think that probably the greatest deficiency amongst leaders and really people in general is the lack of discipline when it comes to a strategic calendar. Yeah. And so for me at this point in my stage, and I didn't do this for a long time, but all my calendar is digital. My assistant has access to my calendar, but I am intentional about every hour of every day for my whole entire year. Wow. And so for me, if you asked me, what are you doing August 7th at 3 p.m., I could actually tell you. Yeah. I have that mapped out. Now there's flexibility, there's spontaneity. You got to have all that as well. But I do have a map. I have a plan. I know how many hours it's going to take me to prep a sermon. I know which weeks I'm preaching and which weeks I'm not. I know what series I'm teaching. I know when I'm traveling, when I'm taking invitations to other churches, when I'm doing leadership development, et cetera, et cetera. Most of my 2022 is pretty intentionally mapped. Wow. And now I don't just know work stuff. I also know, when am I taking my wife out on a date? Yeah. When am I participating in my kids' sports? When are we going on vacation as a family? All those things are prioritized out. And so for me, planning is a real critical part of being who God's called you to be. And so what does that look like in real life? Every Sunday, I sit down typically after church. I know people think you're crazy. Why would you do this? To me, it's a good flow. After church, we put a football game on or whatever, and I plan out the specifics of my week. Mm-hmm. And so from most of my week is already sketched out in my planner, like I said, much further ahead. But then on Sunday, I really tweak it. So like, hey, what am I doing when? Like this meeting, for example, that we had this. It's in the calendar. I know when it starts. I know when it ends. I got another one after this, And so it's part of my calendar because it's a priority for me. I want to be able to do this. And so that's calendar. And I would encourage people, things don't happen by accident, And so when am I going to exercise? It's all on my calendar. When am I going to have time with the Lord? It's in my calendar. Yeah. When am I going to have a Sabbath? It's in my calendar. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't plan these things, they don't happen. Yeah. And the thing that informs my calendar are my goals. And so for me, I'm actually going to pull it out right now. For me, here at Vox, we work on what we call an M3, which are 90-day goals. Yeah. And so there's a lot of studies about this, but they really show that a 90-day span is a sweet spot for goals. It's long enough to really get something done, but not so long that you forget it and lose sight of it. Yeah. And so some people set year-long goals, and that's great, but you just forget. It's like, this year I want to write a book. It's like, all right, break that down. What are you going to do in the next 90 days? This year I want to become an athlete. Okay, break that down. 90 days. And so for me, I base everything on a 90-day flow. Yeah. So mine's done. Here it is. Yeah, these are my 90 days.
It is full. I'm seeing it.
Yeah. So I actually have personal goals. I'll share some of those, but I have some creative goals, some entrepreneurial things I'm going to start goals, and then some leadership goals, things I have to get done. And so for me, let's see, 10, 17 plus 5, 22 plus another 11. I have 33 goals for the first 90 days of 2022. And I know that sounds like, oh my goodness, dude, it's pretty exact, but it is. Like, so for me, here's some personal goals. I'm going to read 10 books for growth by May 1st. Yep. I'm going to set aside 3 days personally for prayer and fasting. We do some of that as as a church, as staff as well. I'm going to take my wife on at least 2 overnights just to get out of here. Some other personal goals. I'm going to try, don't make fun of me for this one, Kurt. I'm going to try 30 days strict, whole 30 days. And so that's another one.
Living that healthy lifestyle.
I'm just trying to get there, man. All personal goals. And so, these are just, I'm getting my boys on my 2 older boys each on a mission trip this year. I'm finalizing those for 2022. So anyways, I've got all these personal goals, then some creative goals, finishing my next book, writing the outline for the one after that, some new things I'm starting, those entrepreneurial goals, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that's kind of the way I do it. And then I prioritize those goals.
Yeah.
And I really say, hey, what are the most important ones? And by May 1st, we'll see, I try to get between 60 and 80% of my goals done.
Wow.
Obviously, you want to get 100%, but to me, if you got everything done, you probably shot a little too low. So I'm okay with not getting everything done as long as it pushes me to go to that next level. And so, I'm pretty intentional about that. It takes a lot of time. And that's what people don't understand is you have to plan for work. And some people, no, they just get to work. That's fine, but you don't know what you're building. And so you got to get a vision of the future and then make it down into a strategy and then work it every day.
Well, I think it's fair to say that your goals in particular, we'll talk about this M3.
Yeah.
It's not just a you thing. This is something you impart throughout the entire church.
Yes.
And what I've noticed is every single person here, they use a handwritten calendar.
Yeah.
They do their hours and
Yep.
and it's almost a system that's set up set up for success.
Right.
And what I've noticed just talking with people and talking about their M3s and going through things is everyone kind of sticks to their goals.
Yeah.
Just like what you said, their goal is to hit 80% of what's on their list. And if they can hit their list, the system, I don't know who had this system first and you did.
I started at 17 years old, stole it from a bunch of people and really tweaked it over time. I think for me, I read, I think at 17, the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah,
and he talks about self-leadership. And then from there, The 1 Minute Manager and a bunch of other leadership development books, and the Leadership Challenge, books that really help you outline how do you set specific goals, SMART goals, goals that really are measurable and attainable and et cetera. And so, it's just a system that when we had no employees, I was doing by myself.
Yeah.
We had volunteers, I was doing it with volunteers. And then we've built it out. We call it our M3 process because we talk about the mountain, that's where I want to go. And then the map, that's how I'm going to get there. And then the metrics, those are the specific goals for 90 days. And so those are the M3. But we talk about our M3 process. And it really does. The idea is that every member of our team on staff here at Vox lives as a entrepreneur, as a self-manager by generating these goals.
Well, there's your next book.
Yeah,
right,
I could write that.
Right there, M3. how to be an effective leader. I like that. We'll TM that.
Oh, you gotta make me think about that, man. I've never thought about writing a leadership book.
That's what I'm saying, right there. So that's all great, and I love the fact that you have all your goals set out, and but I wanted to talk about something today that was actually brought up to me through a conversation with someone close that I knew.
Yeah.
Not to totally derail the conversation and not talk about leadership, because I could talk about that all day. I love that stuff, but it got me thinking about where we are today as a society, and having a conversation with this person in particular. He was. Him and this other person were in a room, and both Christians, both believed in the same things, both believed in the Bible. But a conversation got brought up about a specific topic, and it was about gay marriage and getting specific. And one person believed in one thing, and the other person believed in the other thing. And the question that was brought back to me is, how do those two people with the same values that believe in the Bible, believe in Jesus, and believe in everything, but how can they differ in opinions so much? How can they communicate well with each other?
Yeah,
and
good.
And there's so many different topics we could talk about. Politically, there's all these hot topics. There's certain amount of Christians that believe this. There's certain amount of Christians believe this. But as a whole, as a people, how do we communicate and how do we open up our heart and love each other? That in the moment and not disagree about different things. And I know it's a little bit of a crazy question, but it got me thinking, if you were in that situation, what would your reaction be?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing, I love what Augustine said so many years ago. I might mess up this quote, but he said, in essentials, unity, in non-essentials, diversity, in all things, charity. Right. And so this idea of you have to know what your essentials are, and then you have to know what your non-essentials are. and then your attitude over everything should be love. Okay. And so first of all, am I approaching this person as a object or as a person made in the image of God?
Yeah.
Sometimes we kind of simplify a human being that's sitting across the table from us down to a belief or down to a topic like gay marriage. We don't see eye to eye on this, therefore I cannot be in a relationship with you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's appropriate, because in all things charity, Jesus was the master at loving the person that did not agree with him. And the reason that he was able to do that is he saw imago Dei. He saw the image of God in them. And so if I see the image of God in you, then my general disposition towards you is charity. Doesn't mean that we're always going to agree. Doesn't mean that we should be best friends. But my attitude towards you is going to be charity. So that's the first thing. So first is I love you unconditionally, and I honor you as a human being, whether or not we agree.
Yeah.
Okay. So a lot of people, especially in our sort of, totally divergent culture that's like we're in one camp, we're in another camp.
Yeah.
They treat the other person as less than human. And to me, that is a dishonoring of the gospel. And so it shows me you haven't internalized the love of Christ, because the love of Christ will compel you to treat every person with honor and dignity. Now, if you're going to treat every person with honor and dignity, the second thing is then, okay, if I'm going to be in close relationship with this person, what are my essentials?
Yeah.
The things that I am not going to bend on. And here's what I would say as a pastor, what I believe the essentials are. First, salvation. What it means to know God, follow God, and love God in Christ. And if you want a good picture of the essentials, look at the Apostles' Creed, look at the Nicene Creed. These creeds aren't just like old things that they used to put on banners. These are actually statements that Christians have fought over and wrestled over for centuries and come to these things. We believe God the Father, the Holy Spirit, the Son. We believe forgiveness of sins. These are the fundamentals of our faith. So that's the first piece of the essentials, is the good news of the gospel through Christ articulated. I would start with the Apostles' Creed. That's a very beautiful picture of what I would call the essentials of the Christian faith. Okay. So from there, after that, I would say that there are 4 key issues that, in my view, a biblical Christian must espouse, must agree to. The first is the value of human life. You're going to notice 2 of these are historically very conservative values. 2 of these are historically known as liberal values. So the first is the value of human life. Life begins at conception. Life in the womb is valuable. All human life has dignity and therefore should be protected.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how a Christian can say, hey, I think people should have abortions all the time. It's like, well, okay, the scripture's pretty clear. Before I was born, you knew me. In my mother's womb, you knit me together. So the value of human life is the first one. The second one is a biblical view of sexuality, okay? When the New Testament church exploded and began to grow, what the council that came together in Acts 19 said was, hey, even though we have different cultures and different backgrounds, we should celebrate our cultures. These Gentiles don't have to become Jewish in order to be Christians, but they said you should abstain from sexual immorality. So sexual immorality is something that transcends culture and should always be an anchor point in the Christian faith. So first, the value of human life. Second, a biblical view of sexuality. And what we would say that is heterosexual monogamous marriage, right? And celibate singleness. So those 2 expressions of sexuality, which again, the world's going to go, what?
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that makes Christians unique. Okay. So those 2 things are generally seen as conservative issues, right? And so the value of marriage, one man, one woman, and life, the value of life, those are typical conservative. But the other 2, the first one is the intentionality and care for the poor. That's the third thing. So Christians must care for the poor. Not just, well, God helps those who help themselves. No. We have a biblical obligation to care for those in need. And so that's the orphan, that's the widow, that's the person on drugs, that's the person that's down and out. We should have intentional. Now, how you care for the poor, people have been arguing about for thousands of years, but we better have a plan to care and love and serve those that are the least of these among us. It's a biblical requirement. And anybody that goes, I don't really think about the poor, that is outside the privy of the gospel. And then the 4th key issue is this issue of race, that the church should be a model of biblical diversity, where we should care for the marginalized, where we should give special attention to those who are minority status, because the world is going to be an uphill battle for them, unlike it is for those that are in a majority. And so The church should be a place where racial unity, where racial solidarity is frequently talked about, wrestled for, fought through, understood, where we should have open conversation, and we should have an intentional plan to actually look diverse like the world we're trying to reach. And so diversity and unity and anti-racism, the poor, a care for the poor, a deep commitment to a biblical view of sexuality, and then this need for to really protect human life.
Yeah.
Those 4 issues, in my view, are sort of the closed-hand essentials of the gospel. They're going to flow right out of the gospel. Now, you could always argue about, well, how do we do racial unity? How do we do caring for the poor? How do we protect life? Those are all things we can discuss. But as Christians, those 4 really do make up a foundational issue outside of the gospel. So the gospel is the centerpiece, right? Apostles' Creed. And then from there, those 4 issues, I would say, hey, listen, I can be friends with people who don't agree with me on those. I can honor them because of Imago Dei, but I'm not going to marry them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to marry them because those issues are key. And conservative, liberal, you'll notice that that's a mixture, right?
Yeah.
Christians can't be committed to the Republican Party more than they are to Jesus. They can't be committed to the Democratic Party more than they are to Jesus. Our ultimate mandate is to enter into culture and be priests and prophets to our culture, which means you might be a Republican, you might be a Democrat, but don't give your soul to that party. Give your soul to Jesus, and then rebuke that party when it steps out of line with gospel truths, and then support that party when it doesn't. And what you'll always find is neither political expression is going to perfectly describe the gospel in our time.
Yeah. Well, that's powerful. I mean, just giving us a baseline of what is a good path to be on.
Yeah.
We start here, and then we can expand to the nitty-gritty of everything else that's out there.
Yeah.
But it's just these 4 pillars. So we have the value of human life.
Yep.
We have sexuality. We have intentional care for the poor,
Yep.
and we have a biblical diversity of race.
Yep.
And for some of our listeners out there, I know that these 4 things, and I know there's other things. There's other hot topics that
Yep.
people are wondering. Well, what if they believe this?
Yep.
Should I?
Yep.
Is it okay?
Right.
But this is a great answer for anyone out there seeking just a little bit of truth on what it is to be a Christian and where to go from here, especially starting a relationship. And this could be friends, this could be,
Totally.
But I mean, those are 4 great things to focus on.
And remember, like what Augustine said, in all things, charity. So one of the things that Christians have to really lead the way in our culture on is when I don't agree with you. Maybe we don't see sexuality the same way. Maybe we don't see, human life the same way. Maybe you say, no, human life begins at birth, not at conception. And we, okay, well, we could disagree on that. And I would say there's a strong biblical case for being, starting at conception. But my point is, even in our disagreement, though we may not be best friends or get married, I can still be honorable to you. I can still be kind to you. I can still respect you as a person because you carry the image of God. And so that's a critical piece, because Christians should really lead the way in this hospitality, this sense of, listen, I'm going to be generous to you, whether we agree or not. Not because everything in our lives align, but because you carry the image of the one that I worship.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it just talking. I mean, you think about the fine line that we have with different conversations with people. Sometimes we're so quick to anger.
Yeah.
Just because they said something. In actuality, we need to think beyond that. We need to think, okay, does this person know Jesus? That's the most important thing that we should be thinking at any time.
Yep.
I mean, that's what our job here on earth is, is to walk with people and to lead them to Jesus. So, I go back to this conversation that I had with this person, and I think about these things all the time, instead of just being so quick to anger and, disagreement. It's okay to have a debate,
right.
But to be angered over what they're saying, and I get it. It's a crazy world out there.
Totally.
Sometimes it's hard to talk to people.
Totally. And I think the thing that makes Christians, and this is probably the most controversial thing about Christianity, the thing that makes Christians so different is that we are a community of people in process, but as leaders who have come to a point where we say the truths outlined in Scripture are going to dictate our perspective over our own personal opinion and preference.
Yeah.
And so that's a radical idea. What we're basically saying is we believe that this old book is a lot smarter than we are, smarter than our culture, smarter than our times, that it really is outside of history. Now, there are historical elements that need to be taken in historical context. I get all that, but it's teaching us truths that are not just historically good, but they're eternally good. And if we believe that, then it needs to inform the way we live our lives. And so every week when we open the Bible, it's not like, here's a nice story, let's chat about it. What we're actually saying is we believe that the Bible's over us, that it is transcending our intelligence. And so we're submitting our mind and our opinions to it. And so I might say, hey, listen, I'm never going to forgive that person because they don't deserve it. But the Bible comes over me and says, if you don't forgive them, God won't forgive you. And you go, oh, okay, I think I have to forgive them. If I'm going to receive the grace of Jesus, I have to forgive that person. So I no longer have the cultural right to say, no, that's not forgivable. It's like, well, then you're not forgivable. That's what Jesus said. And so like, again, that truth offends me, but then transforms me. And so the whole idea of a Christian is saying, I'm actually believing that the truths outlined in the Bible are greater than my own opinion. And that takes time. And I know that not everybody's there. And so we're willing to walk with people who maybe don't believe that. You know, that's fine. There's probably a lot of people in our church that don't believe that. But the leaders of our church, the foundation of our church, we actually believe this thing. And we've done our homework and we've been convinced that the truth of the Scripture is the anchor we can live our lives around.
Dropping truth. Dropping truth. And you talk about the Bible, and this leads me to my last question. You know, just a recap about the relationships and things like that. But going back to the actual Bible, and this is a question that someone actually walked up to me and asked, but you know, what version of the Bible do you recommend? There are different versions, there's a bunch of different scriptures, and some scriptures actually, I mean, the meaning is the same, but sometimes the words are different. That's so what do you recommend for people that are out there looking, maybe who don't have a Bible or looking to just get the Bible that you recommend?
Great question. Yeah. So there are three basic ways that Bibles are translated, right? So we know that the Old Testament was written primarily in Hebrew, New Testament primarily in Greek. There's some Aramaic in the New Testament, but the translators took three different approaches, right? There's the word-for-word translation, there's a thought-for-thought translation, and then the third would probably be a paraphrase, okay? So a word-for-word translation is going to be much more direct, but a little clumsy, because it's not necessarily put in modern vernacular. A thought-for-thought translation is going to be a little smoother, but maybe not quite as accurate. And then a paraphrase is really going to be informed much by the theology of the paraphraser, okay? All three have their place. I generally preach from a word-for-word translation, the ESV, the English Standard Bible. That's the typical one I preach from. It's, in my opinion, the most accurate English translation of the Scripture. So I love the ESV. If you're new to the Bible, that might be a little clumsy. So a second option is the NIV. That's a thought-for-thought translation, the New International Version. So it's a little less accurate, a little easier to read. If you're brand new to the Bible, I always recommend the New Living Translation. If you're new to this, it's like, what? How many of these are there? That's the NLT. Okay, so it's like you're ordering a sandwich. Let me get an NLT. But the NLT is just really easy to read. So my sons are 15 and 12. I have them reading the New Living Translation because it's just very, very readable. Sometimes it's not exactly accurate in its wording, but it's so helpful in its phrasing that I think for a new person reading the Bible, if it's your first time through, read the NLT and then maybe move to the NIV and then eventually to the ESV.
Got it.
And you can rewind this as many times as you have to remember those three translations. But that's the way I would go when it comes to Bible translations.
Yeah, it's actually a good question. I thought about it, and I've always been using the same one, and I'm like, oh, there's so many different versions
Kurt
out
uses
there.
the BLT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the good one right there. That's
Delicious.
the good one. Yeah, but that's so good. No, but I appreciate you answering that question because it's you really kind of brought it home.
Yeah.
And hopefully for that listener out there, that answers what you're looking for. But JK, I appreciate your time. I know we went a little bit over today.
Always fun.
Yeah, it is always fun. I really enjoy this time with you. All right. It's so I appreciate you. And guys, again, any questions that you have for our podcast, feel free to email us at beyondsunday@voxchurch.org, and make sure you subscribe, share, whatever you want with this podcast. Send it to your best friend. We appreciate you, and we appreciate you listening. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week.